Meeting to order, and ask that everybody either turn off or mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. And I would like to lead us this evening in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first order of official business tonight is Village Manager and Village Clerk Rob Bahan will read the March 17th, 2020 election results and then swear in our newly elected and re-elected trustees. Rob, take it away.
Certainly. Thank you, President Rintz. For the office of Village Trustee, there were total ballots cast of 2,991. Robert Apatow received 33.34%, or 1,669 votes. Penfield Lanfear received 34.88%, or 1,746 votes. And John Swerk, 31.78% of the ballot with 1,591 votes, all duly elected to office.
You're here. Do you do your swearing in now, Rob?
Yeah, I think we'll have to, we'll come back to Penny at some other time, but why don't we start with Trustee Swerk. Good evening, raise your right hand. Can you see me and hear me okay? I can't hear you, John, you need to unmute. Okay. Okay, you ready? Okay, I, John Swerk.
I, John Swerk,
Having been elected to the office of Village Trustee
having been elected to the office of Village Trustee
in the Village of Winnetka,
in the Village of Winnetka,
in the County of Cook,
in the County of Cook,
in the State of Illinois,
in the State of Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Village Trustee
of the office of Village Trustee
according to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congrats, John.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Apatow. I, Robert Apatow,
I, Robert Apatow,
having been elected to the office of Village Trustee
having been elected to the office of Village Trustee
in the Village of Winnetka,
in the Village of Winnetka,
in the County of Cook,
the County of Cook,
in the State of Illinois,
in the State of Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Village Trustee
of the office of Village Trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Trustee Lanfear, need you to unmute.
She's unmuted.
Okay. All right, Penny, are you ready? You ready?
There we go. Okay, I'm on. Okay,
Okay.
I think so.
All right, raise your right hand, please.
Okay. Ah!
All right. Penn Lanfear,
Penfield Lanfear,
having been elected to the office of Village Trustee
I've been elected to the office of Village Trustee. Right, here we go.
in the Village of Winnetka,
The Village of Winnetka,
in the County of Cook,
in the County of Cook,
in the State of Illinois,
in the State of Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Village Trustee
of the office of Village Trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations to you as well.
All right. Exciting.
Okay, everybody sworn in? We good now, Rob?
We're good.
Okay, I would like to call the new council to order. So we're not going to do the pledge and all that stuff all over, right? No?
Nope.
All right, item number 4, we'll check quorum. Rob, you want to go ahead and check quorum, please?
Okay, our next regular meeting is next Tuesday, May 19th. Does everybody plan to be available?
I was thinking about taking a big trip, but
Let me check my busy schedule.
Your driveway and back, perhaps?
Right.
Okay, and then the meeting after that is June 2nd.
Okay,
Conflicts?
I'd probably be here. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, reports, trustees. I'll go around the horn based on what I see here on my screen. So, Trustee Swerk, any report?
No report, thanks.
Trustee Kripe, any report?
no report.
Trustee Coladarchi,
No report.
Trustee Dearborn?
I would only say that I attended the chamber board meeting this morning, and they're working like the Dickens to help out retailers, commercial district, doing everything they can. So kudos to Terry and her crew.
Thanks, Bob. Trustee Apatoff? Yep. Mute. Did he say no report? I
No
couldn't-
report. Yeah, no report today.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
And Trustee Lampier?
nothing going on.
Okay. Village Attorney?
Good to see you all again. I have no report.
Okay. Village Manager?
Nothing specific tonight, thank you.
Okay. And Village President? Well, I'll make up for it then, guys. Okay. Just a couple updates on things. I just wanted to report that since I last reported on April 19th, we had reported 60 cases of COVID-19 here in Winnetka. As of last count today, we are up to 65 cases. So that basically means that in the last 25 days, we have added only 5 cases to our count here in the village. Winnetka's done a great job, and we need to stay on course with our social distancing and the wearing of masks in public places, which regretfully will probably be the norm for many months to come. Last week, Governor Pritzker announced his proposed 5-point plan entitled Restore Illinois. I'm sorry to say I'm extremely disappointed with the fundamentals used to create this plan and truly believe that we can do better. Under the stay-at-home order that we're currently under, which is effective until the end of the month, we currently sit at phase 2 of the Restore Illinois plan. This plan divides the entire state into just 4 geographic regions. It requires that any given region achieve several performance standards based on test results and the availability of medical equipment and facilities to serve affected patients before it might proceed on the path to reopening. Yesterday, Governor Pritzker announced that the Northeast region, in which we reside, has not yet achieved standards to move into phase 3, which would permit the reopening of non-essential businesses on a limited basis. There are still a few weeks left before the final tally is taken, and he has encouraged those in the region to continue their efforts. To be honest, when you consider our numbers, I don't know if we could do any better. Regretfully, this plan ignores those areas in which the region has been successful in flattening or reducing the curve, including Winnetka. I'm calling on our governor to reconsider the excessively general, region-based approach and employ a more surgical methodology. This would allow well-performing municipalities such as Winnetka to begin to move on a path towards a more normalized experience and cautious reopening. I'm sure there'll be more to come on this in the days ahead. Secondly, I'd like to report that after many weeks of urging, the state is finally taking applications for pandemic unemployment assistance. This program is funded by the Federal CARES Act and provides unemployment assistance to self-employed or contract employees to receive unemployment benefits that are generally not normally available to these classes of workers. Fundamentally, if your income is derived primarily from 1099 or K-1 type income, and you've been unable to work due to the COVID shutdown, these resources you may be eligible for these resources. This is a really important tool that may help suffering small businesses owners keep afloat while the shelter-in-place restrictions continue. If you're interested, go to www.ides.illinois.gov and follow the links for PUA. This is really important for small businesses, with our single proprietorships, or in our town, we have a lot of folks that are, independent contractors and who earn most of their living on 1099 based income sources. And this really permits those that have been shut down from working to at least get a little something to help them keep the doors open and keep the lights on while they wait for us to move out of this phase 2 and into future phases. So Rob, I'm hoping that that village staff will make the businesses in town aware of this, that it's now available, and assist them in any way possible. Regretfully, in typical, I'm trying not to be too sarcastic here. One of the features of this particular program are you have to apply for unemployment benefits, which you are not entitled to, get rejected for them. You are then permitted to go ahead and file for PUA assistance. So I'm asking anybody who decides to follow that path to be persistent. The money is there. It's federal money that's been set aside for these small businesses, and they should make themselves available to it if they at all possibly can. That's my report for this evening. So we'll move forward on the approval of agenda. Does any trustee wish to move an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote?
No.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Apatow, trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks, Rob. The village clerk will now read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the village council meeting minutes for April 21st, 2020. Approval of the warrant list dated April 17th through the 30th, 2020, in the amount of $985,355.98. Resolution number R38, 2020, waiving formal bidding and approving agreements with Surveillance Technology Corporation for software support services. And that is everything for the consent.
Great. Thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, there we go. Roll call vote?
Trustee Dearborn. Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Lampier.
Motion carries. You know sometimes how when you're getting dressed in the morning and you forget to put your watch on and you just feel really naked, like something
Wrong.
amiss? Well, I'm sitting here just feeling like something is amiss in this meeting, and I realized that I missed public comment. So we're going to have to back up just a little bit, and I am now going to open the microphone or whatever is available to public comment. And I believe we received a couple of email public comments, and I was wondering if either Kristen or Rob could also share those with the trustees as well.
Yeah, I believe the 2 emails were routed earlier today, but they were specific to, I believe, the 191 Sheridan Road case.
Okay. So those wouldn't qualify for the standard public comment, correct?
Kristen, were there any other public comments?
There were no other public comments, and I just verified through the email address, no additional emails have been received. So we have no general public comment for this meeting.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, I'm still a newbie when it comes to this technology, Kristen. There's no public comments coming through the WebEx portal from live people who may be watching?
That is correct. That feature has not been enabled for this meeting. The public comment needed to be emailed in order to be considered.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, now that we've gone through that, we'll move on to item number 9, ordinances and resolutions. Our first item tonight is ordinance number M6 2020, 859 Sheridan Road variations. This is up for introduction, possible adoption. This zoning variation request was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals in March and is being considered for a possible waiver of introduction and adoption. Here to review the case is Community Development Director David Schoen. Hey, David.
Yes, good evening. Kristen, could you allow me to share my screen, please?
Yes.
So this evening we have 2 applications. The first one here is at 859 Sheridan Road.
Lost your audio, David. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. The subject property is located on the east side of Sheridan Road between Lloyd Place and Tower Road. The property is zoned R2 single family residential. These are 2 images of the subject property. It currently contains a 2-story residence. You can see they're proposing a new addition to replace the existing structure here in the upper, on the far right side. The existing structure in 3 areas is currently non-conforming, and those are the 3 areas they're making slight adjustments with the new addition. The minimum rear yard setback requirement, they're just short of that requirement. As you can see here, 20.31 feet is what they're proposing. Required is 20.44. In terms of the minimum side yard setback to the east, they're proposing 4.31. I should note the existing setback is 5.73. So it's a little smaller setback they're now providing, which is less than the 12-foot requirement. And then the code requires for front-facing garages towards the street that you're allowed no more than 2 9-foot wide doors. In this instance, they're proposing to replace their existing single door with another single door. The first floor plan shows the proposed garage, again in about the same location, but a little bigger than what's currently there. And then above, they are replacing an existing bedroom with a laundry nook with a new expanded bedroom and creating a separate laundry room. The ZBA recommended approval by a vote of 7-0. There were no members of the public who came to speak. There was one letter of support from the property owner to the east. So tonight, we're asking the council to consider introduction of the ordinance or consider waiving introduction and adopting the ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David, please?
I have no questions.
None here.
I do have one question. Is the letter of support from the homeowner on the side where he has a limited variance, a small variance?
Correct. Yes, to the east. Yep.
Anybody else?
No questions. I like it.
Me too. And no other deliberations. Looks like we don't need those either. So, all right. I guess we have an option of waiving introduction and moving right to adoption. So, before we go through the formal process, does anybody have a problem with waiving introduction of this?
I do not.
Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M6 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Apatoff,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Lampier, trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
and again, trustee Lampier.
There we go. Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M6 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn, trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Apatoff, trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Swerk.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving forward, ordinance number M7 2020. This is deja vu all over again. 191 Sheridan Road, variation, up for introduction, possible adoption. This is another zoning variation request that was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals in March. It is also being considered for a possible waiver of introduction and adoption, and David will again review.
Yes, as President Rintz alluded to, the Village Council reviewed a project on this site in November of 2017. That project did not move forward, and I'll talk briefly about that. The subject property is located on Sheridan Road between Winnetka Avenue and Fuller Lane. The property is zoned R2, single-family residential, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Here is a photo of the subject area on the property where the applicant plans to replace this existing cabana with another accessory structure. The existing walk in this location would remain, as well as the existing stairs and rock baskets would remain. And that's where the water's edge is for the lake, and that is where the setback is measured from. So the minimum requirement along the lake is a 50-foot setback. The applicant is providing in their plans for their accessory building and elevated walk, a setback of 20.93 feet. The structure that they're building will consist of a living area, storage, and a powder room, as well as building some retaining walls along both sides to the north and south. The existing stairs that lead down from the top of the bluff would remain in their existing location. This is the front elevation of the proposed accessory structure. And then the accessory structure is here in the middle, and then there are these retaining walls and walkways behind it. This is then the previously approved front elevation from 2017. There are other plan sheets in the council's packet for your information. We put together this table to compare the existing improvements with the proposed improvements, as well as those that were approved in 2017. This structure that's proposed is slightly larger than the existing cabana, but significantly smaller than the previous approved artist studio. There's no longer a pool included in the proposal, nor is there a tunnel connecting the accessory structure to the principal structure. The walkways along both the north and south are not being disturbed now as they pulled the improvements in. And then the setbacks are about the same or a little closer to the lake than what was previous, than what's existing, but less than what was previously approved.
So what specifically, how much closer is it getting to the lake or into the bluff?
How much closer is it getting to the lake?
Yes.
So the proposed improvements, the walkway that's in front of the building is now 20.93 feet, which is about the same location as the existing walkway. And then the building is 26.16 feet versus 33.5 feet. So it is closer to the water's edge, but not as close as the previously approved plans in 2017.
Was that this long ago, David? I seem to remember this more recent than 2017. Why am I?
It was shortly after I started. It was November of 2017.
Wow.
Seems like just yesterday.
Yeah.
It does seem just yesterday, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Why did they decide to pull the plug on the approved plan and come back with this?
I believe the applicant is available if you'd like to hear from them. My understanding is they wanted to scale back the scale of the improvements in terms of the construction activity, the requirement to construct the site. They are, from our understanding, will be barging the materials in. They don't have adequate room along the side of their home because the house is built very close to the property lines, and don't have an easement that exists there, doesn't allow for construction activity, but does allow for more pedestrian scale activity on the adjoining property. So they've scaled back the project.
Gotcha.
Hey, David? Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify, going back to Trustee Apatoff's question. So on page 88 of the packet, where you have the table of the existing versus what was approved and the current, accessory building front setback along the lake, the existing is 33.5 foot setback. And you have here 26.16 feet. In the ZBA packet, I just want to make sure there's just an inconsistency here, I think, or I don't understand it. On page 123, it talked about the requested zoning relief. It says the cabana currently provides a setback of approximately 33.5 feet. The proposed improvements would provide a setback of 20.93 feet. Now that's what you have for the elevated walkway. The ZBA packet seemed to say that the building is 20.9, but here it says it's a 26 foot setback.
Yeah, let me get back.
There's guess the question is, what is the walkway and what is the building setback?
So there is a walkway that has covered or has storage underneath it, and that's the point from where the setback is measured. So there is a elevated walkway in this area, and underneath it is storage. The accessory or habitable portion of the accessory structure is set back further on the other side of that walkway that's located here. So the 20 point whatever feet is measured to this elevated walkway with this storage, and then the remainder is to the building.
Okay, so in the ZBA packet, where it says that the setback, proposed improvements will provide a setback of 20.93 feet. The building is not 20.93, that's the walkway?
Yes.
The building is actually, is this correct? Is your table correct? It's 26 feet versus 33 and a half?
Correct.
Does that include, wait a minute, Bob, does that include the storage, David? I thought you said the storage, that area, those 3 bays down there start at 20 feet now, or is that still 26? The walkway is 20.
It is 20.93 feet to this walkway.
What walkway, David? Are you pointing to it? I can't tell.
You can see these doors here. Can you see my arrow?
Yes.
Really? Oh, you can see it? Okay.
Let me try something else.
Okay, that's a little better, I guess.
I'm not seeing a cursor. Oh, there, okay. Right, thanks.
Now we're talking.
So that's the storage, and then there's this elevated walkway. You can see the railing above it.
Yes.
Okay, so the setback is measured to that. That's what they're getting relief for. What you would typically think of the building or the part that people would go into is set back farther because of this walkway.
So where those French doors are, that
Correct.
is the building that is 26 feet. Is that correct? No. Yeah, that's
So they're moving that up 7 feet, is that correct? 33 to 26?
yes, right.
Okay.
That would be right.
Yeah, no, this portion is at 20.93. And then where the French doors are at is 26.16. The existing cabana is at 33.5. So they are, I'm sorry, trustee, you were correct when you said they're moving it up about 7 feet.
Versus the last proposal we approved had it moving up to 18 and a half feet.
Correct.
Right.
You have a good memory, Penny.
Yeah, I can read charts really well.
So David, so compared to the old proposal, did they also raise up the finished floor of the habitable area?
Yes.
I think they did. If you look at the old one,
Right. Yeah, it's
where the storage is, I think where the doors were.
right.
You just verify that though.
If you look on page 101, I think it has it.
I can't read the numbers on the
Yeah, it's
version I
page
have.
101 of the agenda packet.
The architect is on the line, or should be. We could ask them. He may have that number handy.
I'm happy to admit the applicant, the architect, into the room now.
Yep, I heard somebody. But not anybody else.
If you, variation 3.1, shows what you're looking for.
Hi, folks.
Hello,
Hello.
there's Jeff.
There's Jeff, our architect is on.
Hi, Chris. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey,
Good to see you all again.
It does seem like
How are you guys?
Hi, Chris.
it does seem like yesterday, doesn't it now?
Oh, gosh.
He does.
Well, let me give you a little background, so maybe I can make some little clarity here. The scope of the work, as you kind of alluded to a little bit in the discussion, was reduced for a couple reasons. Mostly because after the last 2017 ZBA and Village Council Board approval, there were discussions with the neighbors afterwards where the neighbor to the north voiced some concerns about proximity to their property and disruption because the existing stairs that you see to the north and south that come down on the angle run fairly close to the property lines, at least on one side. Secondly, the neighbor to the south initially was willing to allow potentially some access past the easement for pedestrian access to the south, but that kind of disintegrated over time. So we were left with a much larger scale project that really became much more expensive and complex to do by barge. So we actually decided to reduce the scope of the work to make it easier and less invasive to construct via barge, and also to kind of pull the entire project a little further from the lake, further back, and also smaller from the north and smaller from the south to kind of quell the neighbors' concerns or thoughts. So that's why we are back in front of you again, as well as the ZBA previously, for a reduced scope variation based on building size, building width, scope of work, and setbacks. So hopefully that gives you some clarity.
Gotcha. Any questions for the applicant or their architects?
Yes, this is John. I do have a question. The reason we got him on was the finished floor elevation of the habitable space. Is that the same as was approved before, or has it been raised or lowered?
It has been raised up about, I believe, 18 inches.
Okay, all right.
The previous approved one, yeah. And that was
Okay.
not because of lake concerns. That's not because of lake water concerns, because we've been working with Dan Creaney and John Chabika over the course of this project for the past 3 years. And we are still assured that we're even if we were at the old level before, we're fine in terms of the lake water and the lake level at this point, as well as the distance from the shoreline for wave damage, et cetera.
Yeah, but you pulled it back about 8 more feet to the west, I think, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Great. All right, thank you.
And previously, the living space had gone down to the base where the storage is now. Is that correct? So now the living space is higher than it was previously?
Yeah, that's true.
Right, okay.
So we're kind of in the middle between those two at this point, just because of where we were and where we needed to be based on the design, and also trying to work with the steps to the north and south. It seemed to work out better from a stopping point where we left those and landings to land where we are right now. It may be in the field when we get actually footing foundations and getting Dan Creaney to put specific points to the grading plans and the elevation points, that may fluctuate 6 inches to 9 inches, but this is basically where we landed. Yes.
Chris, we received 2 letters. Is there a way to officially submit these before I ask a
Yeah,
question
I'll
about them?
open this up for public comment in a minute, Bob. I wanted to make sure we got all the testimony from the applicant and community development. Then I'll ask Rob and Ben to tell us how to go forward with the public comments and get them in the record.
Okay, the only thing is I have questions on those letters for the architect
Oh, okay.
at some point.
Rob, Ben, you guys want to help us out here? How do we deal with this?
Sure. I think at this point, Kristen, would you be able to just read the letters into the record? And then Ben, maybe we'll read the first one, see if there's any questions, and then read the second one and take questions from there.
And that works to get them in the record. That is just fine.
Ben? I'm sorry. Should I proceed, Ben?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Members of the Village of Winnetka Council regarding virtual council meeting, hearing and consideration of an ordinance variation application of the 191 Sheridan Road Santee residence. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, the application as read is asking for the council to approve an ordinance M7-2020 variation whereby the traditional minimum of a 50-foot setback would be reduced to a 29.93-foot setback. As owners of the adjacent residential property located at 181 Sheridan Road, we do not oppose the granting of the variance, giving a setback of 29.93 feet setback, subject to the following conditions precedent. Number one, the cabana replacement of the existing cabana be built on the same footprint of the existing cabana and not be an enlargement of the building. Two, all construction equipment, materials, and supplies be delivered to the construction site via the lake by barge. Three, that no pneumatic installation of shoring or piling be made in the construction process whereby harmful vibrations of the earth could occur that could harm the foundations of the 181 residence, pool, or bluff embankment. Four, that the use of the easement sidewalk between the two homes be utilized for the sole and exclusive purpose of worker access to the backyard construction site. Workers access only, nothing in the way of equipment, etc. 5, the construction fence be required. Said fence shall only be placed so to shield the backyard construction site and of an opaque material suitable to the 181 property owners. 6, being mindful that there is a duly recorded, quote, view easement that runs between the properties, including the backyard areas. The finished reconstructed cabana must not violate this view easement. 7, the cabana reconstruction project should not exceed 180 days from start to finish and be fully completed at the conclusion of the 180-day period subsequent to the completion of the construction project. The property owners of 191 shall fully restore the backyard site to an acceptable condition. Thank you, Charles W. Hannon, JD, Fortuny Masuda, 181 Sheridan Road, Winnetka, Illinois.
It's like a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I was about to say. Is that it?
That was the first letter.
Can I ask a question on that letter?
Sure, Bob, go ahead.
Several, it's not our job to sort of comment on understanding, I don't think, but I just want to make sure that the first comment I have is that the comment about the setback, that's incorrect. Am I right? It's not a 29.9 setback. It's a variation of 29 feet. Am I reading that right? Correct. So I just want to make sure that we understand that at least, this property owner, that I think their understanding or what they said here was not correct. The setback is not as far as that. Secondly, and this relates to the second letter, but I need the architect or someone with building experience to explain this, the shoring and piling, because this letter is requesting that no pneumatic installation of shoring or piling be made, where I think when Kristen reads the next letter, they're going to talk about how there should be permanent structural shoring. And so I don't, to explain, if they could explain this to me and what's going to be on. I think the concern is disrupting the bluff through construction. Can they explain how they're going to do the shoring, and then the engineers can say if that makes sense?
While they're doing that, also, I'll add one more piece to that letter, Bob, which is the 180 days. Is this something the Santees have agreed to, or anybody's agreed to?
No.
Is that their arbitrary?
Days. And they were about the variance, and they've heard all of the information at the variance meeting as well. We've discussed this many times with them, but never the amount of time.
And what I would say is, I think we're pretty sure that within the 180 days, we can get the bulk of the physical construction done. We're also, because we're now having to barge in all the materials, we're subject to a lot of variation due to weather. So we, in accommodating them and not being able to use that easement, we are taking on more variation from a time standpoint because we're having to use the lake to bring everything in. But I do think, and our builders on the we call it the webcast as well. He wants to comment, but I think we can get it to where within that 6-month period, there's not a lot of, sort of visible work going on above ground, but we're going to be inside the structure probably at that point, still doing some work.
Before you make any commitments, David, when you issue a building permit for a project such as this, what is the typical duration that you allot for a construction project?
15 months.
Is it our obligation as a council to accommodate a neighbor's request for a building envelope? I mean, a time period?
David?
It's not typical through a variation process that would be a condition.
I mean, I'm not sure how that would be our responsibility.
It's not a PD application.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
You can.
And likewise, I'd like to add that, the means and methods of how they do the construction of any pilings or anything is a means and method. And I don't believe that's up to the council.
Well, I think, John, I remember this part of the conversation at the last presentation of this in 2017, and it had to do with any disruption to the neighbor's, bluff, the structural integrity of the bluff. And so we have one neighbor, and I don't want to get ahead of Kristen's reading this letter, that is requesting permanent shoring, structural shoring, and another neighbor who's requesting that no shoring be installed because of the risk of disrupting the bluff. And I'd like someone to explain.
Welcome to our world for the last 18 months.
No, I understand.
What are your block parties like?
Yeah.
We've been trying to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, that's right.
What is going to be done engineering wise in terms of the bluff?
Could I weigh in here? It's Jeff Harding.
Please.
If we back up just to think about the means and methods of construction here, let's look at two things. One, any kind of vibration or pile driving that would take sheets of metal for shoring would probably be more disruptive and damaging to our homeowner than any of the neighbors. Let's be clear on that. Secondly, the reason we have pulled this entire structure in, both from the north and the south, is to mitigate that, and it was not planned in the first place. So on a third note, based on the type of construction and what we're leaving in place, the amount of shoring that's done is minimal because of the retaining walls we are putting in are only holding back 3 or 4 feet. We are not gouging and excavating out the entire bluff. by any means or methods whatsoever. So the neighbors can make their request, whether we do shoring or not do shoring, or if we do one type of shoring one once and the other one doesn't, and it doesn't make any difference because it is not our desire and it's not our recommendation, or is it our method of construction to even approach it that way. The fact is, the retaining wall that's at the center of this structure, which is basically the width of the habitable space you see on that elevation, exists and will stay and will be added to. The wing walls to the left and the right, which fall within the existing staircases as this reduced scope has been presented, are only about 3 feet in height off the existing grade. And that's just to allow the grade to be more gradual as it goes down the hill. There is no plan and there's no desire to scrape and excavate and completely change the contours of this bluff.
Point number 3 of their letter, no pneumatic installation of shoring or piling be made. That's being satisfied.
You broke up. One more time.
Point number 3 of their letter that said that they're requesting that no pneumatic installation of shoring or piling be made in the construction process, whereby harmful vibrations of the earth would occur that could harm the foundations of the 181 residence, pool, or bluff. That's being satisfied.
That is exactly our intent, and based on our engineers and our contractor, that's the way we are approaching this project. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Jack, did I see you waving your hand previously?
That was at one of my kids.
Oh, okay. Out of the room. Now John's got his hand up. Go ahead, John.
As long as they're on that letter, there was talk about the view easement. I believe when we approved this back in 17, we made it very clear that we're not, as a village, looking at enforcement or review of any of the view easements. Is that correct?
President Ritz, if I can, it's
private agreement between the homeowners on those properties. And yes, we are accommodating that such with the scale of the building being reduced and lowered, as well as the opaque, quote unquote, fencing that will be placed on the bluff so that it does not impair their implied vision during construction.
Okay, let's let Ben weigh in on this. Go ahead.
Thank you. Typically, the position of the village and the one that we recommend is that we do not interfere or try to adjudicate or interpret easements between private property owners. If there is a violation of that easement or any other easement, that would be the right of the neighboring property to pursue their legal remedies, and it would be up to a court to enforce that and interpret it. We don't really have jurisdiction to interpret a private document, and doing so, I think, is not the precedent that we would recommend for the village.
Gotcha. Okay, any other questions, comments on that particular public comment?
No, I just had a question for after public comment.
Okay. Kristen, you want to go ahead and read the second letter we received then?
Dear trustees, we would like to address this meeting with our comments about the upcoming construction at 191 Sheridan and express our concerns about the stability effect this construction can cause to our bluff and our property at 195 Sheridan. The proposed structure being approximately 20 feet below the surface of the bluff and only approximately 22 feet from our property line can affect the structure property. We would like to ask the village to require a permanent structural shoring provided by the owners of 191 Sheridan to protect our property. All construction is going to be done from the lake because 191 Sheridan Road house is situated only inches from north and south properties, which will add considerable time to the process of proposed construction. We would like to inform the trustees that only Winnetka from all the municipalities along Lake Michigan allowed to build underground structure on the bluff. Considering that the level of the lake is the highest ever and a majority of properties along the lake lost their beaches, bluff is a natural barrier to protect properties from erosion, and doing shoring provides a temporary solution to protect neighboring properties. As an example, Highland Park, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff have 40 feet distance requirement from top of the bluff in parens protected zone. Kenilworth has 35 feet and Glencoe has steep slope regulation. All villages on the North Shore do not allow to build structures on the bluff. Why does the village of Winnetka not follow similar rules? Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Leo and Milena Birov, 195 Sheridan Road, Winnetka, Illinois.
Interesting commentary from somebody who's benefited from that policy. Does anybody have any questions relative to this particular public comment?
I only have one question, trustee, or not question, one comment. So that we're not like sending the president to build in the bluff. He's really, this proposal is to reconstruct an existing structure that's already there and to more stabilize and make the bluff better. So that's how I would reply to that.
Okay. Jack, you had a question that you wanted as a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick question for Ben, probably. The granting of this lease, allowing the structure to be closer to the lake, does not create any problems for the village or liability later if the lake destroys the structure. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. So if I understand the question, you're asking, is the village liable to the homeowner if the lake destroys the structure in the future?
Correct, based on the fact that we granted a variance from a rule that was meant to protect from that.
The answer is, I think that the likelihood that we would have liability is minimal. We're protected by the Local Government Tort Immunity Act, which has tort immunity from actions that result from granting of permits and relief. And you know, in terms of if it was a neighboring property that was damaged, there are, common law remedies that they would have against the applicant if they disturb the bluff and would cause damage. And in terms of us, I think that any potential liability is incredibly small.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add that just like with this ordinance, as well as we do all others, is we have the unconditional agreement of consent in which the applicant would be indemnifying the village if somehow somebody were to try to hold us liable.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that in the ordinance, but I just looked over it.
Let me double check.
I'm sure it's here. I probably looked over it.
I don't think it is.
It's supposed to be Exhibit C to the ordinance.
It's page 116 of the agenda packet.
160 or
116.
116.
Number 3.
Yeah, it is there. It's Exhibit C to the.
Oh, Exhibit C. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's after the plans.
Gotcha.
Okay, yep.
Any other comments or questions?
My only comment is I liked it 3 years ago, I guess. And I commend the homeowners for, scaling it back and trying to, work with the neighbors, which seems like a difficult task. But yeah, I like it. And I don't think we should get in the middle of any the particular private party concerns that have been raised, I think this is it's a good plan. And the other thing I'll say is, and in case anyone doesn't remember, one of the compelling reasons for giving relief is, I mean, they're reviving an existing structure, but it's a beautiful historic home. And I think as a policy, it's really important for us to allow flexibility and to encourage homeowners to do wonderful and creative things with these beautiful old houses. That's how we can maintain them. That's the best thing I think we can do to maintain them. And so anytime a homeowner with one of those houses comes forward with the idea to rejuvenate the property that respects it, I think I think it's a good thing for us to be doing. So.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I would just, I would echo what Andy said about the 1927 house and the structure and so on. I do remember, I think I was one of two trustees, Penny, you might have been the other, who voted against this at the time.
It was John. It was John.
John did?
God was going to wash it away.
But I will say this, and I think part of the reason for that was, one, the size of the previous structure. I don't remember all the details of why I voted against it, but the size of it, and kind of protecting the lake front, the integrity and the beauty of it, and so on, and also the concern to some extent of the construction on the bluff. But I think the fact that this project is significantly smaller, much less invasive construction to the neighbors. I think that this is actually, unfortunately, it took the Santees 2 or 3 years of misery to get here, but I think this is a much more in scale project, and I'd be in favor of it.
I'm with you. I guess the conditional letters, especially when they're going to the extra trouble to try to do this right and bringing in from the lake, the barging in is going to be, I can assure you, more expense and hassle. And I'm sure the Santees are eager to get this constructed as fast as they can as well. So kind of the conditional letter is a little strange, but that's not our issue.
Well, they're, I don't know if I say this, but they telling us to sell their house and have a builder to have it torn down. So I don't know how concerned they are. And I'm telling you all that because I know you love Winnetka. And if you know anyone who would love a beautiful historic house, please spread the word, because they have mentioned that to us several times, and we have keep trying to say, please come to us first, because we would do anything to save that house as well. But I'm just telling you all to spread the word, because you're going to see me writing an editorial in the Winnetka Talk one day, because I love to save their house. It's a beautiful house, but I think they're in the mindset of selling it maybe to our other neighbor, not the first house. So we're trying our very best to save this, section of this beautiful history of Winnetka.
Here.
Any other comments before we bring it back in?
No, I would just like to say again, I think this is a really sympathetic plan, and dealing with lakefront erosion on the Michigan side, I completely sympathize with the difficulty of having to barge in materials. So I know it's expensive and difficult. So you guys are, really taking on a lot to benefit your neighbors, and good luck with the whole thing. And I think this plan is great. So good luck, and I'm definitely in support.
We'd like a tour afterwards.
Yes.
For sure.
Okay, folks. Well, we have been provided with the option of waiving introduction on this one as well. Does anybody feel strongly about not waiving introduction?
I would support waiving introduction.
Okay,
Does
well,
that sound right? Right.
That's great. Well, then I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M7, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Apatoff,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Lampier.
Yes.
Awesome. That motion carries. Now may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M7, 2020?
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Apatoff. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Trustee Apatoff,
Yes. Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Carries. Thank you.
That motion carries. Thank you. Scott and Nancy, good luck. Hopefully you'll get it in the ground this time and you'll invite us all over for a party when it's all finished. So
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you all.
okay, item number 10, old business. There is none. Item number 11, new business. This is the item A is the COVID-19 financial impact update. Village staff has projected revenue shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic response. While the village's conservative fund balance policy and careful budget planning will mitigate the financial impact, Finance Director Tim Sloth has prepared a summary of the current economic forecast for Winnetka. So, well, there he is. Hi, Tim. So Tim is going to go ahead and give us a overview of the items that he's presented in the agenda packet. Take her away.
Thank you. I think, okay, here's the content. Thank you. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve, staff has been closely monitoring the financial impacts to the village's budget. For this evening's presentation, we are going to provide a brief overview of the broader economic impacts, review the current state of village reserves, discuss the direct financial impacts of Winnetka along with the village's current financial response, and answer any questions that you may have. Slide. Next slide, sorry. In regards to the economy, here's what we know to date. The COVID-19 pandemic is a declared national state of emergency, which has precipitated an unprecedented global economic downturn. In the United States, first quarter gross domestic product was down 4.8% and is expected to be much lower for the second quarter. Since the middle of March, over 33 million people have filed for unemployment, and as of the end of April, the unemployment rate has hit 14.7%. The stock market, which peaked at almost 30,000 in February, fell to under 24,000, and many key industries such as travel, entertainment, and restaurants have been completely disrupted. With the current stay-at-home order in place through the end of May and a phased approach to reopening thereafter, the outlook for future remains uncertain. Next slide. The village has historically maintained conservative fund balance policies and was well positioned heading into the financial downturn. Fund balances are strong and cash on hand will be sufficient to meet payment obligations for the remainder of the year and beyond. So our fund balance policies are for the general fund to maintain a minimum reserves of 6 months of operating expenses. The utility funds, the electric and water fund, minimum reserves of 4 months operating expenses. And then I have our estimated balances at December 31st, 2019, the general fund at $24.8 million. Which exceeds the policy minimum, which is 11.86 million. Trick fund, which has a policy minimum of 5.17 million, currently has an estimated balance at December 31st of 6.75 million. And the water fund stands at $3.75 million, which exceeds the policy minimum of 1.2 million. Next slide. The direct financial impacts of the village, we are seeing an increase in direct expenses related to COVID-19, along with a more significant decrease in revenues. On the expense side, COVID-19 expenses to date total $23,545, and this includes spending on personal protective equipment, cleaning supplies, and technology to facilitate remote work. For these expenses, we are seeking various avenues for reimbursement for these costs, including grant opportunities and the FEMA Public Assistance Program. And for the balance of those expenses that's not covered by reimbursement by FEMA or other grants, the village will be using the liability insurance fund for any costs that are not reimbursed. Next slide. While the village will see additional direct expenses due to the COVID, the primary financial impact will be reduced revenues. We have made various revenue projections assuming the current stay-at-home order continues through May, followed by a slow resumption of activity in June and a return to a more typical yet still recessed economic environment from July through the end of this year. We've put forward our best effort to present a realistic financial picture for the purposes of planning, but we'll continue monitoring on a monthly basis and update our assumptions as necessary. Slide. So just going into a little bit more detail, within the general fund, we do expect to see many revenue categories impacted, and those are as follows. Starting with permits. Permits have a budget of $1.6 million, and we're currently projecting to end the year at $1.1 million, or 71% of budget. And what we've seen with permit revenue, we have actual information for March and April, and we saw that permits were 30 to 40% of budgeted expectations. So we looked at 5-year trends of what type of activity we would expect to see during March and April, and within March we saw 30 to 40% of regular activity. So we are projecting similar results for May, and then to pick up to 75% of expectations for the remainder of the year. Next slide. For sales tax, the budget is $1.275 million, and we're currently projecting for the year to end at 75% of budget. The total of $953,000 will be the lowest total on record since 1994. We did see a little bit of lift because we do have some actual data for the months of January and February, and those allocations came in at 115% of budgeted expectations. So we got a little bit of lift. We're actually tracking well until the virus hit, and then we're expecting to see a decline to roughly 40% of expectations for the middle of March through May, and then begin to pick up and peak at 75% of budgeted expectations for the remainder of the year. We do expect to see the 2 grocery stores and the 2 pharmacies in the town to perform well and hold up this revenue source, as well as internet sales are expected to trend positively as well, but that's actually in a different category of use tax, the sales tax for those sources. Next slide. For income tax of the local government distributive fund, we budgeted $1.2 million, and we're currently projecting $1,050,000, or 86% of budget. And this is, of course, impacted by the increase in unemployment. So as people unfortunately lose their jobs, there's less withholding, and that impacts the amount of income tax that is collected and then later distributed to the village. There is a little bit of a floor in that expanded unemployment insurance is taxable, so that will prevent some deterioration in this revenue source for 2020. And what we've seen in past recessions is that income tax is a little bit slower to hit in terms of its deterioration versus like sales tax and permits. Those usually hit pretty immediate and then come back a little bit quicker. Income tax usually has more of a sustained longer term decline. Next slide. A couple other categories that have minor budget but are expected to see a significant impact are fines, anticipate fewer parking violations issued, as well as interest income, which we have currently budgeted at 48% of budget. And this is directly impacted by the decrease in the federal funds rate. Next slide. Property taxes, which comprise 55% of the general fund, are expected to hold up really well and come in at about 97% of budget. We budgeted the amount of the levy, which was $15,047,000, and are currently projecting $14.6 million. And property taxes are a very stable source of revenue for the village. They're typically a tax that, people will do everything they can to continue to pay. And we did receive the first payment, the first installment, which was due in March, and then the second payment is due in August. Typically, in a normal year, you might see anywhere from 98.5% to 99.5% collection of the levy. Even in an off year like this, we're still projecting about 97% collection rate. Other minor revenue sources are expected to see moderate impacts, or in some cases, there might be small outperformance of budget. Next slide. So in total, the village budgeted $27.5 million in the general fund for revenue, and are currently projecting to see $25.8 million, or 94% of budget. So the total revenue shortfall we are currently projecting is $1,668,946. Next slide. For the motor fuel tax fund, we have a budget of $540,000 for motor fuel taxes, and are currently projecting $404,000, which would be 75% of budget. And it should be noted, the motor fuel taxes are based on the consumption of fuel and not based on the price per gallon. So it's strictly based on how many miles people are driving and how much they're filling up. Next slide. Moving on to the utility funds. In the water fund, we have a budget of $5.2 million and currently projecting revenues of $4.6 million, or 89% of the budget. Currently, year-to-date consumption is 9.6% lower than what the 4-year average has been, but this is largely offset by a budgeted rate increase in 2020. Next slide. For the electric fund, budget of almost $18 million, and are currently projecting $16.5 million, or 92% of budget. Again, year-to-date consumption is lower, about 4.8% than the 3-year average, but is somewhat offset again by a budgeted rate increase in 2020. Next slide. Continuing on to the other utility funds. Sanitary revenues will track consistent with the water fund and are projected at 90% of budget, while stormwater and refuse revenues are based on set monthly fees, and we expect those to largely track consistent with budgeted expectations. Next slide. For the pension funds, in the fire pension, we see an investment performance is down 12.77%. So the value of the fund through the first quarter ending March 31st, 2020 is down $3.6 million for the quarter. In the police pension, the investment performance is down 11.98%, and the value of the fund at March 31st, 2020 is down $3.9 million. And IMRF I've not seen where they've released their Q1 investment results. I know they have a meeting later this month that I expect to see those numbers released. Next slide. So for the pension funds, the investment performance may impact future village contributions. The full impact is still unknown and will be determined based on this fund status at December 31st. So as you may recall, on an annual basis, there is an actuarial study put together with the cutoff being December 31st of each year. So as of now, of course, it's indeterminate what the market will look like at year end. The performance of the stock market is kind of a large indicator as to how well the fund will hold up. And it should also be noted that investment performance going into the actuary report is smooth over a 5-year period. So any 1 year's poor performance or superior performance, it's smooth over a 5-year period. So basically how it works is at the end of this year, December 31st, 2020, the line will be snapped. The actuaries will look, at that year, the investment performance along with the previous 4 years, determine all their actuarial assumptions, and then, spit out a recommendation for the village's tax levy, so the 2020 actuary report will go to determine the 2021 tax levy, which will then be collected and distributed to the village in 2022. So there's a pretty delayed effect into when the pension funds impact the village's budget. And then the other wild card within the pension funds is the impacts from the previous pension consolidation. Those are still largely unknown at this point. Next slide. We've put together and based, our financial response, which is to self-insure and seek FEMA reimbursement for any direct expenditures, maintain reserves for future capital needs. And then we are proposing $3.9 million in budget reductions to mitigate any expected revenue shortfalls. Next slide. So at this point, we'll go through those proposed budgeted reductions. On the operating side, we're looking at operating budget reductions of $1.3 million, $1 million, a little over $1 million in the general fund, and about $130,000 within the electric and the water funds. And operating reductions include such items as deferring of staff recruitments, reduced overtime due to cancellation of events, cutbacks to supplies, reduced programs such as landscaping and forestry, and postponing other projects and reducing transfers to other funds. Next slide. On the capital side, we're proposing capital budget reductions of $2.5 million, and that consists of $637,000 in the general fund, a little over $130,000 in the electric fund, $1.2 million in the water fund, $125,000 in the motor fuel tax fund, $200,000 in the sanitary sewer fund, and $265,000 in the refuse fund. So all in total proposed budgeted reductions, including operating and capital, at this point, we're looking at $3,887,900. Next slide. And just going into a little bit more detail on those proposed capital budget reductions, again, totaling $2.5 million in the general fund. We're looking at reducing the annual sidewalk replacement, cutting that back by $90,000. Deferring a purchase of a new leaf factor, $70,000. Defer $50,000 in fire training tower repairs, and reduce the annual street replacement program, $427,400. And I should note that when we talk about deferring a purchase, at this point, we're looking to defer that to 2021. And then when we start the 2021 budget process, we would reevaluate at that time if that still makes sense, and reevaluate the financial landscape at that time and see if that still makes sense to be able to make those projects go in 2021, or if certain other priorities and those projects need to be deferred even beyond that point. Next slide. In the electric fund, we're looking at $137,000 in capital reductions, taking advantage of expected savings in the ComEd interconnection project of $100,000, deferring pad mount switchgear and deferring 2 pad mount transformers of $37,000. And in the water fund, we're looking at $1.2 million by deferring water main work in school zones, which total $926,000, and deferring other water main projects valued at $150,000. And it looks like I did include the cost here, but the roof replacement, deferring the roof replacement project, which was a $140,000 project. Next slide. So the next few slides just show the locations of the water fund and the street reconstruction programs that are being deferred. So in total, these projects total $1.3 million, of which $925,000, roughly $925,000 is in the water fund, and $427,000 would be through public works in the general fund. Next slide. So the first couple of projects include water main work and road surfacing on Warwick Road and Essex Road. So the Warwick project totals $569,700, and the Essex project is at a little over $150,000. And then the next project, next slide. On Gage Street, total for the water fund of $240,000, and total in public works of $136,000. This total project of $376,800. Again, water main work and road resurfacing that would be deferred at this point. And then the final project is on Merrill Street. Next slide, please. Total of $253,700. So the thought process on deferring the water main and these road surfacing projects that are directly near school districts was twofold. First of all, we're delaying all water main work at this point during the stay-at-home order because we just didn't feel that it made sense to continue those projects and disrupt water service during a time when people are at home and need access to water, and especially for washing hands during this time where everyone's trying to be extra clean and healthy. And then specifically to the school zones by the delayed start, if we start our projects sometime in June with the delayed start, there was concern that these projects would, by being started late, would continue on during school season and when they opened up and interfere with traffic routes during the school season. So these seem to make sense as items to defer. Next slide. For some of the other funds, proposed capital reductions, motor fuel fund, $125,000. That consists of the Willow Road Phase 2 engineering for water main work there. The sanitary sewer fund, $200,000. This fund had a total capital program of $400,000, so we're proposing a reduction of 50%. And then in the refuse fund, a cutback of $265,000, deferring the refuse container purchase to 2021. So as you know, that there were major changes planned for the refuse fund for 2020 that have been postponed to 2021. So we're deferring the capital portion and the container purchase that would have been necessary for those programs to go forward to 2021 as well. So the next slide shows a summary of the proposed budget reductions. So all in on the major funds that are shown, we're looking at 2020 revenue that will be about $3.9 million short of budgeted expectations, along with total proposed reductions of $3.8 million, $1.3 million on the operating side and $2.5 million. So the proposed reductions almost equal the shortfall in revenue. And then one item that wasn't mentioned when specific to the electric fund, due to the decrease in projected revenues as a result of an expected decrease in demand, there is an offset of purchase power, which totals about $660,000. That was not included as a proposed reduction, but is an expenditure reduction that we expect to see. So the total in reduced expenses within this fund is $931,000. Next slide. So finally, going forward, finance, we're going to continue to closely monitor the financial impacts of the economic downturn. We'll prepare updated projections regularly as more data comes in. We're still very early in this process. We have some revenue data for March and April that's specific to the utilities and certain taxes. But other taxes, we still haven't seen any actual data, so it's a little hard to determine an exact impact of this event. But as more data comes in and as information changes, we'll be on top of it and we'll be preparing updated projections regularly. And the plan is to report back to council in July as part of the annual audit presentation, and sooner if it looks like we'll need to report back sooner. And then finally, we anticipate being in a better position towards the end of the summer as we kick off the budget process to really see what the medium and long-term impacts of this financial downturn are. And we'll start planning for a 2021 budget, hopefully with a little more complete information to be able to adequately plan. So at this time, that concludes my prepared remarks and presentation, and I turn it over for any council feedback or discussion.
Any questions?
I'll start. Tim, I thought that was
I
really
mean, that's been a lot of
excellent,
work and trying
presentation.
to.
Is that Penny going?
Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead. Anyway, good presentation, and I think you guys have done an excellent job at, a first crack at this, with a lot of unknowns out there at the moment. I liked your chart, by the way, that broke it all down by fund, capital and operating. I thought that was that's helpful. It shows how electric is being spared, if you will, for the moment, where water is sort of picking up the slack on that. The pension issue is going to become an issue later on this year in our conversations. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think that this plan, at least my perspective of it, shows good consideration, circumstances that residents and businesses are facing and having to make adjustments themselves. I don't think at the moment that we should be touching our reserves. I think we should do exactly what you're doing and looking at our operations and adjusting those accordingly. And we'll see what the future holds. If we improve, if expectations are met based on these, if they're better or worse, we'll find out. But I'm glad that we're not, at least at the moment, going into reserves because I think they're there for a really, really bad rainy day, that we could be in, before long. Who knows? But I think this was a really good effort. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Penny, you were jumping in before?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, this is a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate the balance that is being struck to have savings reflected in the appropriate funds. I was wondering about tapping into the insurance fund to pay for stuff that isn't covered by FEMA. Is that necessary, or is that something we should just carry as a cost this year?
I think it makes sense. This is a one-time event, and while it wouldn't be covered by our insurance agreements, we are self-insured for the deductible portion up to $100,000. And like I said, it wouldn't be necessarily anything that's covered if we hit that deductible, but we do have sufficient reserves in the liability fund. And to me, I think it makes sense to treat this as an insurable event, especially while the actual direct expenses are pretty reasonable. I think it makes sense. If it turns out we see those expenses, escalate and they get beyond, that kind of deductible range of about $100,000, I think at that point we'd probably want to further evaluate whether it makes sense to continue to pull out of the liability fund or maybe use additional resources.
Thank you.
This is Rob. I found this awfully helpful, and everybody else is going through this exercise. We're doing, when academia has to go through this, I'm doing this at Kellogg right now, and you're seeing deferments and things like that. When academia is hit, everyone's been hit. So I thank you for the effort on this. The way you broke it out was very helpful as well. I think we can look the residents of Winnetka in the eye and feel good about the fact that we are not just spending, we're actually trying to reduce and meet these shortfalls and not have to go back to them. And I hope all the other, not our problem, not our issue, but I hope the other taxing bodies of the village who continue to go for the max on each tax raise have the same type of fiscal discipline. And I would just encourage them to do that, because I think there are a lot of people that are hurting, but a lot of people that are they're feeling it. Not just the fact that they're shut in, but their accounts are down. They're digging into savings at times, and I think that's important that we set this type of example. So thank you for making this work happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, I thought you did a great job, and Rob and everyone. One thing I would say that I like about it a lot is kind of where you focus the reductions. One thing that I'd like to just express is it's really important in times like this that we have a great team. And I want our entire village staff to understand how important they are to us, and that we're well prepared for this so we can weather it like this. And our staff should know that at a time like this, we really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. And so when we're talking about cuts, we're talking about the sorts of things that you laid out. We're not going to do anything that's going to undermine or jeopardize the great team that we have. So thank you for doing that. The other thing I would say is now that feel like have our legs under us a little bit in terms of where the village is at, I think a discussion, hopefully in the near future, going back to what Chris started us off with, Chris, I completely agree with your view. I think that I appreciate all the hard work the governor has done. I know it's a damn tough job right now, but that plan is not good. And it makes no goddamn sense whatsoever to live in a world where it's a crime for someone to give a haircut, but you can sell pot. Like, it doesn't make any damn sense to me at all. And our restaurants and store owners should be able to get back in business. The plan does not reflect the reality in Illinois. And if we can put our heads to that, I'm not necessarily looking for a fight with the governor, but at the same time, the state of Illinois, they've got their own issues to deal with. So I think we should start thinking about things that we can do in Winnetka to get things reopened safely and smartly. Our restaurants, we shouldn't be going past May 30th. It's absolutely ridiculous. I just, this whole thing of distinguishing between whose job is essential and not essential irks me. And everybody's ability to earn a living is essential. So we need to stay smart and reflect the reality here in Illinois. So hopefully we can have a discussion like this next and soon, because those people need to be able to get to work.
You'll be hearing, yes.
Tim, thank you.
Next week.
Hey, Tim, thanks. It was a great report. I love how we're on top of things. Rather than, hey, we're in November and now we don't have any money, what are we going to do? And we spent the money. And Andy, I am totally on your side. We've got to figure out a way to get our businesses open. There's no reason why you're able to shop at Target and buy a lamp you could buy in Green Bay Road.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Everybody spoken? Okay. Guys, good work. What's up, Rob?
No, I just wanted to thank Tim and the department head team. They're all listening in right now. It has been like working through a mini budget under a pretty short time frame and gathering as much data as we can. So this will be just part of our normal routine now, almost every week, looking at the fluctuations on our budget and the revenue stream. So I thank you and the council for your support, and we'll be back to you just as soon as we need to be.
But not with a 30-page PowerPoint.
Sorry.
We'll keep it more brief going forward. Now that all the numbers are out there, we'll definitely keep it more brief. And I do want to echo Rob's.
No, I know Bob probably would have liked a 40-page PowerPoint, but Chris would have liked a 10.
No.
So
That was good. It was perfect.
Tim, could you please email that to Chris? I know he'll need it.
It's a good resource. You can put it right next to your budget. And I did want to thank the department head team for going through a mini budget process in the last 2 weeks. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everybody for, putting forward the hard cuts. So.
Because doing it once a year is so much fun. Doing it twice a year is twice as much fun, right?
Right, Benny?
Hey, there is one thing I did want to raise, though, Tim, and I've mentioned it to Rob. I know you guys are tracking some of the, what I guess you'd call hard expenses related to the COVID. I really, really, really believe that you should be keeping track of soft expenses, staff time, inefficiencies that run with trying to run the village in this manner. Because at some point in time, I really do believe there's going to be a federal aid package that the state of Illinois won't be getting their dirty mitts on, and it'll flow to us. And I want to be sure that we are ready to file a full and comprehensive claim when that opportunity comes, and not be scrambling when it pops. So I know there's a lot of talk about the state splitting up the money that's coming in from the CARES Act amongst the municipalities, and the Illinois Municipal League has been really fighting hard for that position. I just want to make sure that we are in a good position to fire off early if an opportunity presents itself and we can get in there with a request. So there's a lot of money floating around out there, and we shouldn't be shy about garnering our share of it as well.
Chris, so at the outset of this, we did set up tracking mechanisms for inefficiency of staff time, the amount of time being allocated to managing the pandemic. So I think, to your point, we'll be ready to submit once there's funding available. We'll be able to pivot on a dime and get it in. I would also say that we continue to see some sources of revenue for maybe shovel-ready projects that came. I saw some of those come out today. We're evaluating those to see if we could take advantage of them. So some of those deferrals that you saw tonight, if we can get replacement funding for, we might be able to move those forward. So we're looking at all those across all funds.
That's good stuff. Thanks for the hard work, guys. We really do appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to move on if that's okay, folks. Number 12, motion to extend the village president's declaration of emergency. Village attorney, here, Peter, but Ben, you're running the show tonight, right?
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
You're running the show for the legal team this evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ben's going to go ahead and review the extension, the concept of extending the emergency declaration. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. So on March 17th, President Rintz issued his declaration. And that declaration, under both our code and the Illinois Emergency Management Act, expires except if it's extended by the village board. The council previously has extended the declaration by motion, and it's set to expire this evening at the conclusion of this meeting unless you, as a council, decide to extend it further. The declaration provides that the village may enter into contracts and emergency purchases for goods and services. The village manager has the authority under the declaration to implement emergency staffing protocols, and it directs village officials and employees to cooperate with other government agencies. So if you choose to extend it further, those powers would continue. If you do not extend it, the declaration would end, and at which point those types of things would fall back into the normal authority and would typically come before this body for approval. So if there's any questions that anybody has regarding extending the declaration, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, I have a couple. Seeing that we're on a regular meeting schedule, are there other advantages? I mean, explain a little bit about Rob's authority relative to this, because I think that's probably the most important point.
Well, the key here, let me take one step back for a second before I get directly to that question. The key with the declaration is it provides the village president authority to continue to act if need be during the emergency. And at the moment, for example, the original declaration provides Rob power to implement what I would call more atypical staffing protocols if he needs to, whether it's if he decides that there needs to be more overtime because there's an emergency, or other kind of things that are outside of our normal operating procedures. But most fundamentally, the declaration would allow the village president, as long as it continues to take orders, you've seen that in other communities around Winnetka, if it becomes imperative to do so without convening the village council. Now, you have the authority to do it through a special meeting or an emergency meeting if need be. But there are, you have not issued other supplemental orders at this point. So it's really just the ones that were in that original declaration are all we're talking about.
Any questions for Ben?
And Ben, this would expire at the end of the next meeting. So theoretically, if we met next week, it expires after that meeting and so on that schedule. So
that would be up to this village council. So a motion can be made to extend it to whatever date you feel is appropriate, whether it is the next village council meeting or a date in the future.
How has it been used to date, Rob? I mean, certainly just what have you done that is this kind of course of business just quicker?
Sure. So in terms of emergency procurement, we haven't had to activate anything out of the ordinary or outside of our normal procurement process or rules. However, when it comes to staffing, the declared emergency gives myself and the department heads flexibility as to how we want to schedule staff, and it also overrules certain aspects of the collective bargaining agreements that will allow us to allocate shifts in a proper and safe manner, so as not only protect the safety of our employees, but also the people we serve. So in that regard, it's been very helpful. I would add that we have also been regularly coordinating with other units of government. Every Monday morning, we have a conference call with our sister taxing bodies. We also, and other parochial schools to coordinate our efforts and communications. And then we also convene on a regular basis, I'd say every other week or so, with the area managers through Peter and Ben's law firm, setting up sessions to talk about whatever challenges may be coming that day. It seems every day there's something new. So the cooperation aspect has been utilized heavily, as well as the staffing protocols.
Thank you.
I'd like to go ahead and make the motion unless anyone has any more discussion on it. Duration of the declaration of civil emergency executed by the village president on this date, and any additional emergency regulations and orders and furtherance of that declaration shall be extended until the date that is 7 days from the date of this motion, or until the adjournment of the next regular, special, or emergency meeting of the council, whichever occurs later.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe? Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier? Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, guys, I'm giving myself a raise.
You can multiply by anything you want.
Yeah, I think I got myself a 50% raise this week, so thank you. Motion carries. All right, item 13, appointments. There are none. I will have some coming up soon, but maybe by next week, hopefully the following meeting, I'll have a handful of them coming through. Closed session tonight, there is none. And the last item, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Dearborn?
Yes, sir.
Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk? Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys.
Yep.